Moco Studios in Oklahoma City. You're watching The Press Row. I'm Jenny Carlson. He's Barry Trammell, and we're brought to you by Papa John's Pizza. Go online anytime and order your pizza at papajohns.com. Barry, it's time for Inbox. We've got all sorts of interesting stuff in the inbox this week after the Bedlam game, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. Let's get to it from Lance. Lance says, I hope the Big 12 is not going to expand simply because of this event, the one that kept Baylor and TCU out of the College Football Playoff. How many 100-year decisions are going to be made based off one event?
I think it's a good, solid question, and I don't think the Big 12 should. I don't think the Big 12 will jump quickly into expansion mode. I do think some people in the conference have always had their eye on expansion. The majority of the conference not. I think that caution will still continue because of this. Make sure this isn't a one-year anomaly. Some people make the point that the Big 12 was just a couple of upsets, or maybe not even an upset away from getting 2 teams into the college football playoff instead of 0. So no reason to panic. I think the Big 12 will move cautiously, probably not on the verge of expansion.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the Big 12 does do, but I think if they don't expand, if one of these things is not like the other, if they don't have a conference championship game and the other 4 of the 5 Power 5 do, I think these teams have got to be seriously mindful of their non-conference, because to me, that's the other issue that, everybody wants to talk about, the title game, and obviously that's an issue, and you expand to then get a title game. But if you look at the non-conference that both TCU and Baylor played, you can't make a great argument for either one. If you're looking at what Ohio State played in their non-conference as opposed to those two, there's a huge discrepancy. There's a great reason why Ohio State should be given that bump. So if they're not going to expand, if they're not going to add a title game, if you're a serious contender in the Big 12, you better be thinking about making sure your non-conference is as good as it can possibly be. All right, back to the inbox from Steve. He says, while performing an autopsy of the Big 12 shutout of the College Football Playoff, don't ignore the elephants in the room. Poor performance of league powers. OU and Texas, I'm looking at you.
It's another good, solid point, I think. The Big 12 has sort of become a parity-driven league. It's become socialism. Everybody joins in. Baylor, TCU, Kansas State, Oklahoma State won the title in 2011. So the Sooners and the Longhorns are not holding up their end. And if it does come down to name brand, I don't know if it, clearly it does not officially, does it subliminally? If it does, then you want Oklahoma compared to Ohio State. You want Texas compared to Florida State. And if OU and Texas aren't going to hold up their end, then the Big 12 is going to struggle.
Well, and I think, too, you have to remember, and maybe OU is sort of out of what I'm about to say, but Texas, K-State, some of those teams that maybe have been a little higher, a little bit longer, you look at their non-conference and a chance to have a marquee victory. Texas plays UCLA. They don't win that game. K-State plays Auburn. They don't win that game. They're close. They're great games. They were both fun to watch, but you don't have those marquee measuring sticks against other power conferences. So I know I talked about non-conference with the first question, but if you're going, I think what is mentioned here about OU and Texas is right, but you also got to have those teams winning marquee non-conference games to then give you another little measure there. And, when they don't, I think that's another black mark against the Big 12. All right, Brad brings us this question. It's about Bedlam. Have you ever seen a worse call by a head coach in that situation in all your years of covering football? We all know what he's talking about, Barry.
Well, he's talking about the fog that enveloped Bob Stoops on Saturday night in Bedlam, not failing to decline the penalty so he could repunt. Tyreek Hill takes it to the house. And the answer is, I've tried, and I have come up with a couple of worse calls. Go back to, I can't even remember who the coach was. Go back to the Joe Pisarcik in the 70s, Giants, Eagles, when all you have to do is take a knee, the Giants win. Instead, they run a play and fumble, and Eagles pick it up, run it in the last 20 seconds. I've seen Baylor, Kevin Steele coaching UNLV back in the early 2000s, and they're ahead. They do the same thing. They try to run up a late touchdown. They fumble. UNLV runs it in with under a minute to play, 90-something yards. So every once in a while, every 10, 20 years, you see a coach just totally lose his head. But Stoops clearly lost his head on Saturday night. He did not think about what the ramifications were of his call. He kicked the ball to Tyreek Hill, and now Oklahoma State is the Bedlam champ.
Nothing to sneeze at. Sorry,
Right.
not you nor Bob Stoops' decision. Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely, he thought about it in these terms. And Barry, you've written about this and we've talked about this. He thought about it in terms of 5 yards back. He thought he could pin OSU a little bit deeper and run some time off the clock. Thought maybe 8 seconds. Well, Tyreek Hill took 11. So they ran 3 more seconds off. It just resulted in a touchdown. Tyreek Hill, the one thing OSU could do to beat you at that point, in my mind, was have Tyreek Hill return a punt, and he got 2 shots at it, and he did it the second time. Unbelievable turn in an unbelievable Bedlam game. All right, Barry, one more Bedlam. It's from Greg. Hey, the best coach won. T-Boone, Pickens, and all the rest of the OSU, morons, need to kiss Gundy's backside. Wow, some strong words here from Greg.
Well, here's the deal. To the victors go the spoils, and the history is written by the winners. And Mike Gundy alienated people for a good part of this season, but you win Bedlam, the charm returns. So clearly, Gundy and his staff outcoached OU and their staff. And then head coaching-wise, Gundy didn't make a colossal blunder. Bob Stoops did. No doubt about it. Who won the coaching duel on Saturday? It was Mike Gundy, and he comes out looking good. You got to say this about Gundy. He can aggravate people. He can alienate people. He can turn people off. But he also has the ability to turn it back on, and everybody's back on his side. That happened Saturday night.
And it's interesting because, obviously when you talk about coaching in the game, because of that big blunder Bob Stoops had, you automatically say it goes to Mike Gundy. But I think even if you want to dig a little bit deeper, you look at player development, you look at player depth. OU, when they lost Samaje Perine, it went completely south at that point. Offense was done, defense was done. Let's remember, OSU was playing their third-string quarterback. They were playing with an offensive line that was largely, still being revamped. They were without Daniel Koenig. So again, movement on that defensive line. Played 2 guys in new positions in the defense at linebacker because of an injury to Josh Furman. So here they are playing with a bunch of guys in positions that were either new or they were fresh to them, and they played pretty darn well. So I think you got to give it up to Gundy and his staff for the way that they're bringing those guys along. Both teams had some problems, had some injuries, had some issues, but OSU able to overcome them, keep coming, and finally, in the end, win, again, one of the more amazing Bedlams we've seen. Be sure to stay with the best coverage team anywhere at newsok.com and every day in the Oklahoman.